I'm firmly of the view that many managers in Australia, you're almost promoted to your level of incompetence. And many managers don't know how to hire, manage and exit. When you have a disengaged or a not engaged employee, in other words, they're a bit the kids would say meh about working here, that costs you 34% of whatever you're paying them. People are saying AI is making them personally 10% more effective from a productivity point of view, and I know I'm seeing that in the way I'm using AI, but the businesses aren't getting more than 10% from a business perspective, and a lot of that is because there's not a structured strategy around how we're planning the workforce of the future.
Welcome to the Martian Logic podcast. This episode features Natasha Hawker, founder and managing director of Employee Matters.
So you talked about productivity and you believe Australia has got potentially productivity issues. So what is productivity and how do you measure it?
Yeah, when I say we have productivity issues, Anwar, I think, the normal way we judge that or measure that is compared to other OECD countries, which is productivity per employee. With that, we sit in the middle of the pack at the moment, so we're not doing as well as we should. We used to refer to ourselves as the lucky country. I'm not sure we are so much the lucky country anymore when it comes to productivity, and I have concerns, which we may chat about later, which is around AI and are we adopting that as quickly and as effectively as we can.
Okay, so how do you measure productivity before we go ahead of ourselves? What's productivity and employee productivity, I guess we're talking about in particular, yeah?
Yeah, the way I measure it when it comes to employees is what is your revenue divided by your number of employees.
That's
so
fair.
Say, for example, you have 2 million revenue and you've got 20 employees, you're getting about 80 grand, I think, from the maths, but you're paying people 70 grand, then you're just barely covering your costs. My view is we should be aiming for 3 to 4 times whatever we're paying people on average. Obviously, there are people in the business that are going to produce more than that. Think about your salespeople.
Yeah.
They might be bringing in $2 million worth of business or $150,000 worth of business, and your admin may not be bringing anywhere near that. But on average, when I'm talking about employees and productivity for businesses, most businesses don't measure that, and they've got no idea what their return on their employee spend is.
The business can't continue if they don't measure it. Well, whether they measure or not, it has to be commercially viable, right? Otherwise they won't have a business, naturally. I mean, that's where the EBIT, that's where the profit comes in, I mean, every industry will have its own standards, I guess, right, in terms of what that productivity average needs to be.
Yes, and for many businesses it may be around what they actually produce, where there's limited headcount, but they produce, for argument's sake, widgets. They may measure their productivity return or their ROI based on something physical rather than their employee assets.
I mean, at the end of the day, it needs to come back to dollars to survive as a business, to make sense commercially, as a shareholder return has to be, comes down to profit, and you're investing $1 million, you're expecting what, 20, 30% from that kind of business in that industry. You want to see it materializing,
Yeah, one would
Otherwise, you
hope.
take your money, invest it somewhere else, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it needs to make sense for that risk profile, for that industry, for that kind of risk profile for that business, And
I think part of the issue that I'm seeing, Anwar, is, if we think back on that productivity piece, apparently the US is 23% better than we are, and that makes us think, well, do the Americans work harder than us? And on average, they don't. We work more hours. But I think what the Americans have been better at is investing in technology, investing in research, investing in things, ideas, development.
The work conditions, you don't think they are better in Australia compared to, from the employee point of view, in terms of the
Much
hours and the flexibility and stuff like that?
Yes, much better. I mean, if you think about it, the other challenge with the US is the employment legislation varies state by state. So where here we've got a lot of harmonisation under the Fair Work Act. So, for many things you're treated the same way. For example, we have the National Employee Standards, which says, everyone gets 4 weeks leave, everyone gets 10 days personal leave, which previously was referred to as sick leave. So, yes, from a conditions point of view, much more liberal, much more employee-based.
So some people argue it's very interesting. Some people might argue against this and by saying, look, well, fair enough. It's not all about productivity. It's about balance. I mean, that's pretty much that word. I know that word is thrown around, the work-life balance stuff. But in the context of this, we want it to be that way. Productivity is a bit less, but that's how it should be, in other words. But I find, that this is, unfortunately, I don't know how sustainable going forward when you've got, as a country, you want to remain competitive. I mean, you do wonder sometimes. I mean, the US, they are quite aggressive when it comes to that kind of stuff in terms of the leverage companies have when it comes to getting more out of their employees from the employment law around them and the law of the land kind of thing. And can a country like Australia not be competitive, not be part of that? What's your views on that?
I think Australia can be competitive, but I think we need to do a few things better than what we do now. So I'm firmly of the view that many managers in Australia, you're almost promoted to your level of incompetence. And many managers don't know how to hire, manage and exit at a bare minimum. And there's so much more to managing a team effectively and really maximising that return on investment.
So not necessarily we're talking about more hours and whatever. We're talking about getting most out of your people on, let's call it, on an hourly basis, for example.
So as an example, if you have non-performers in your team, as in they cannot do the inherent requirements of the job, or they're what we call disengaged or not engaged. So engagement is a measure of discretionary effort. And while what will make someone go above and beyond for you as their boss, not just because you're paying them, but because they're so bought in to what you are and what you do and your vision for your business. So how do we hire, manage, motivate, retain and exit non-performers really effectively? Often we go into organisations to help exit someone and we might say, how long has that person not been performing? And it can be years. And it's like, do you have any idea what that's costing you? Not only not getting the return on that individual, but the employees around you then start to disrespect you as a leader because you're not leading. There's usually a cheer squad when somebody who everybody knows has not been performing at the level they're required to perform at leaves because they've been carrying the load for them.
Do you think over the last 7 years this has become a lot worse? I mean, accelerated, the so-called accountability muscle has really diminished?
I think what we weren't good at, I thought we were great if you take it back to COVID. When COVID hit, everyone picked up their computers and walked out the door. What we weren't great at was managing people face-to-face. We're even worse managing them remotely. What doesn't get measured doesn't get done. Sure, now, people...
But isn't that also the other factor I'd like you to touch on as well? So you're absolutely right. COVID made it worse. You're absolutely right. If you can't manage someone in person, how do you manage them online? True. But also the rise of the council culture through the Twitter world and all that stuff as well. A lot of CEOs are scared. An organizational psychologist consultant that works with CEOs, she said to me, there's a thing called accountability muscle. It's really boards are very, as in the board of directors, those boards are frustrated with their management teams. They feel as if they're scared to really performance manage people properly, especially, be able to let go of the people who are dragging as a drag on a team. And they get frustrated, and that's why they hire me to work with those CEOs and management teams. So if you can touch on that too.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. One is they're not clearly articulating what success looks like for that individual and each of those individuals in the team. What are we striving for? What is it when it's done? What does it look like? That's number one. That's not being communicated. Number two, if there are any inkling of non-performance or disengagement, or even where often managers see there might be or they suspect there might be some sort of mental health issue, don't want to touch that. And so they'll avoid that. And then they won't have that difficult conversation. What I often say to managers is they need to be having those conversations from day one. Would it be okay if I give you some feedback, Anwar? I'm going to tell you what I think you're doing really well. I'm going to tell you where I think we could improve or where we've got a gap. Would that be okay with you? And if you start doing that informally from day one, you're going to get a much better return more quickly. But then if you do have to have that more serious conversation, and let's be really clear about this, the reason why people exit people is often a very good reason. But I often talk about the fact that, ignorance is not a defence. So you have to follow a certain process to make sure that termination was not unfair, unjust or unreasonable. Most managers couldn't do that. Not without some support. And therein lies the problem. Like, we're paying them a manager's salary.
So interesting. So you don't have a I really love the way you're approaching this, and I can feel it right now. So where that, for example, I've used the word accountability muscle being, smaller these days with CEOs. Yes, the pressure from the council culture and social media, being hammered on social media maybe is a factor, but I definitely believe from what you said, I felt that if you don't build that accountability framework that's equitable and auditable and it's got visibility and equity to it, then you're always going to feel that, you don't have enough of that history of that to be able to hold that person accountable. So in other words, it becomes like complacency and leads to depression when you say someone's sitting on the couch, they know they should be doing something, but they don't do it, and they end up feeling worse and worse, and they get depressed about it. This is almost similar of that sort of vicious life cycle. It needs to be stopped by creating an accountability framework. At any point in time, whenever they do it, it's better than not doing it, because they start to build history. And, it sounds like we're ganging up on an employee, but it could end up being when they do that framework, they could end up realizing it's their fault. Yep. The manager needs to make changes and it could work out.
Yes.
So it actually works out both ways. It cannot be negative if you build an equitable and visible and auditable framework to hold, to really show what's going on.
Absolutely.
To measure the performance somehow. Yeah?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the other thing that I think people are not realising, and it comes back to that psychologically safe workplace. We now as employers have to provide, to your point around the US being much easier, it's easier to fire someone in the US, way easier than it is here. Yeah. We have to provide a psychologically safe workplace. So what does that look like? Every business in Australia now has an onus on them to do an assessment and ask their team how they feel. Are they feeling like they're psychologically safe? You then have to collate those and consult with your employees, work out what your top risks are and mitigate against them. So we actually have a duty of care as business owners, you and I, to make sure we're providing a psychologically safe workplace.
I know, I mean, absolutely, like everybody would agree with you on that, but where my brain stopped is, a country like the US, they also need the same quality when it comes to psychologically safe environment. I don't believe it's sustainable to have high performance that's built on house of cards, meaning when people are forced to do things, they feel they're forced, they don't believe in the mission, etc. Especially when it becomes a competitive industry where they have options, they're not going to stay with you if they don't have that environment. It's just not sustainable anyway.
Yeah, so then then the flip side of what we're talking about is...
So I don't know why you thought... I know you didn't mean it. I just wanted to clarify. Yeah. It's not just about Australia. Any country needs that, no?
Every country does. Yeah. But obviously most of my experience is in Australia. So, that's where I've worked in the US and I've worked in the UK and India, and they're all very different. But... particularly, I think Australia has a need to, just because I'm passionate about it, I run my own business. How do you build a business that people want to work for? How do you attract a queue of people lining up because they want to work for you? It was funny, I was reflecting on this not so long ago. When I started this business, I'd meet people in a cafe and it's like, and they'd choose to come and work with me. And I'm like, how did you do that? Why did you do that? When I was just a startup, a fledgling startup. So how do you make yourself attractive as a business and as a leader? And how do you give back to your employees so they want to work hard? They want to excel for you. They want to use their initiative. I talk about a model that will pop in the show notes called employee commitment. And it talks about prisoners, low levels of engagement, low levels of performance. At the top end, you have what we call volunteers, high levels of engagement, high levels of performance, and then you've got your superstars. So if you walk into any organisation, you want to maximise your volunteers and your superstars. So how do you find those people? How do you retain them? How do you reward them?
The volunteers being volunteering to go the extra mile. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, high performance, high levels of engagement. They're bought into your mission, vision, and core values, and they want your business to be successful. We need 80 to 90% of our workforce in that space. So you want people to be
doing high performance for the right cause, not just for money, for example.
Yes. It's got to be beyond that.
That's what you're referring to with the volunteering?
Yes. It's got to be beyond that. Like if you think about, a lot of the people that I've managed to attract to my business could earn, in some cases, almost double what I can pay them to go elsewhere. But they work for me for different reasons. Some it's around flexibility, some it's around giving back, some they want a portfolio of clients.
What's giving back? What are you
so one of my employees, Ros, she works 3-4 days a week for me. Our clients value because she's 30-year veteran. She plays golf, mad golf nut. Likes to play on Friday, but she gives back. So for her, giving back is around Hammond Care. Hammond Care is an end-of-life organisation, respite, and she goes and writes people's life stories. And that's part of what fills her cup. So she has a portfolio client.
But when you say giving back, as in the flexibility arrangement with you allows her to give back, or is she doing that on your time?
No, the flexibility arrangement allows
it's the flexibility.
Yes.
Okay.
So they come to me and say, I want a portfolio, I want to work 4 days a week.
Allow them to
build
give
a
back
life
if they want to
around
give back, to build, to volunteer and do things that they want to do by providing the flexibility, whether it's a part-time job, the perfect part-time, or still full-time, but flexibility on the hours and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's very important.
Yeah. But if we talk about back to that productivity, a couple of the things I'd love your listeners to think about is what's their cost of attrition? What's it costing them to have people walking out the door? So it may be of interest to them that, on average it should be between 10 and 20% of your workforce turnover every year. That's what we call good attrition.
Sure.
But we've got organisations in aged care, much higher, telecommunications, in call centres, 50%. So how do we get that in that sweet spot where we're hiring well and then we're keeping them? The other thing that we need to think about is when you have a disengaged or a not engaged employee, in other words, they're a bit, the kids would say meh about working here, that costs you 34% of whatever you're paying them. And the reason for that is they're not going that extra mile for you. They're not working hard. They're cruising. They're not trying to grow their skills and abilities. So these are all costs to a business that I think many business owners aren't seeing.
Let's go back to the point that we started, which is an amazing point, and thank you for being here to talk about it. It's a point that you sort of specialise in, you're passionate about, productivity, which is how it all started. So you seem to be saying that part of productivity is the quality of work, not just the hours. It's the quality of the hours. And when people are committed to the cause, they believe in the business, they believe in you, they want to see you succeeding, they want to see the company succeeding, all of a sudden those productivity on a per hour basis, so to speak, the metric, whatever metric you want to use, starts to go higher, as opposed to, someone could be doing 4 hours a day and doing a lot better job than someone's doing 10.
Yeah.
Arguably speaking, that could easily be the case, yeah? That's really what we are talking about here. So if that's the case, let's start to maybe talk about the top 3 things that you believe you want people to look at if they were to start to think about how can we improve that productivity metric. What are the top 3 things you recommend they start to look at? Number 1, what would that be?
Number 1, I think, is your NPS, your Net Promoter Score. So many years ago, I used to send out a survey, and no one ever filled it out. And a business mentor of mine said, why don't you just pick up the phone and call your clients and find out? So we started doing that. So that metric is on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the service provided by so-and-so? And then we do that on our employees. Now, our NPS rolling average.
On employees.
On
okay,
employees.
So,
I say on the service provided by Ros or Ange or whoever it happens to be, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate them? Those guys get 9 and 10 out of 10 every time, pretty much. So that is unheard of. In that NPS score on the company, 50 is deemed excellent, 80 is world class. Okay. So delivery, that is what's key here. Why do my clients come back to me? Why do clients come back to you? It's because you deliver on what you say you're going to do.
Okay, so we're talking about the NPS as a metric to – I'm familiar with that. But I'm just to go back to what we're discussing. So NPS is, you believe, number 1 of what people should look at to measure the productivity.
Productivity of your employees, because if they're doing good work, then yes, they're delivering.
Calling the clients that these employees deal with and get them to rate those employees. Okay. One more thing.
Next would be how many disengaged or not engaged or not performing employees do you have?
How do you measure that?
So in some ways it's around performance management and metrics. So would you put people in a needs to improve, that whole meets, does not meet, exceeds
I'm not
expectation.
familiar with that because you said engagement.
Yeah, engagement
We're trying
is
to see
measure,
how we measure the employees' engagement.
Yeah. So let's talk about that first. So engagement is, you can do it a number of ways. There's surveys that you can do it around. Culture Amp is a very popular one. There's one called 6 Qs, and you send it out. It's a confidential survey. They might answer questions like, do you feel your leadership team look after you? Might be a question. Do you feel your team has your back? My team answered that at 92%. So that gives you some comparisons against other employees.
So it's a survey.
Yeah, it's a survey.
Employee survey.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you need to find out what your scores are in that because that's going to be an indicator of whether people are going to stay or going to leave. The other one I would suggest, which is a really common one, but people forget about it, is attrition. You know, if you've got a revolving door of people coming in and leaving your business or a particular area, why is that happening? Is it a particular manager who's not very good at managing? You know, there's a whole old saying that says people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. So, you know, are you a great leader, or are you investing in your leadership so that people are inspired and they want to work for you? They would be my top 3. And then I think other things around
That's the measurement. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how do we then list of 3 things in terms of fixing things to improve productivity? Is it the same thing? How do we?
Well, that survey is going to give you a lot of data and information about why people work with you.
So let's say we've got a problem with all of those. The NPS is low, the engagement is low. What would you say the few things people start to?
Let's start at the bottom. I'm going to start on attrition. So do you do exit interviews? So when someone leaves, do you sit down and have a conversation with them? Most businesses don't. It's a lost opportunity.
Very good point.
Don't have it with their manager because they may not be as honest.
True.
So have it with someone external.
Yep.
The other one that I love that people don't do enough is stay interviews. Not when someone's leaving. What would make you stay with me, Anwar, for another 2 or 3 years?
There's nothing to do with leaving.
There's no one
on an
left
ongoing basis,
on a
once
regular
a year
basis.
or whatever.
Let's have a conversation about, you know, what you're enjoying about working here, what you're not enjoying, what will keep you with me for another 2 years. Now, I can't necessarily guarantee that I can offer up, but if I didn't know, I was never going to be able to offer it up anyway. Or now I know that about that individual, I might be able to maneuver things that is going to make them more likely to stay. So that's number one. That's on the attrition side. If we go back to not performing employees, they are really expensive. It costs between 50 and 150% on top of base salary to go out and hire.
You can't always turn an employee around, though.
No, you
can
can't.
only take a horse to the river. You can't make them drink.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. So I think, you know, attitude is one thing, performance. Sometimes people are, you know, square peg, round hole. They're just never going to fit.
Going through certain issues in their life.
Exactly.
They can't be that person. They can't have the mindset that you're expecting in the company.
Yeah.
In recruitment, you didn't spot that, or soon after that it changed. And no matter what you do, you can't just get them there. You're always going to see them behind on the mindset, you know.
Absolutely. So that comes back to that earlier conversation we had. We need to have those informal conversations so that feedback loop is going round and round and round. And guess what? The individual will probably work it out fairly quickly if they are not a fit. And guess what? They'll resign then. And that's what you want. It's a more dignified, easier exit for you, lower risk exit for you, better for the individual. They feel, I always talk about, even if we need to exit someone, Emma, we need to do it with dignity, respect, and do it legally.
I agree.
So that is really, really important on that side of things. So having that feedback loop, and then if that's not working, going into formal performance improvement plans. Have that discussion, but train your managers. Managers don't know how to have those difficult conversations. They don't like having them. So you need to be training your managers, one, that they can give feedback that's going to impact that efficiency and that productivity because they're very clear about what they need to do. And then if it's not working, that they're comfortable to have those conversations that says, hey, things are not going so well. We need to go into a more formal process.
So train the managers, give them the tool, the accountability framework, such as a performance management tool, whatever, and train them on how to use it and create cadence for them or whatever. Create kind of framework of how to do that kind of continuous performance management.
And I think this one's really simple. And do shout outs. Like when somebody is doing a behaviour that is positive, that is affecting or moving the needle in a way, shout it out to the rooftops and make that something that people can do not only top down from a manager perspective, but peer to peer. Guess what? Success leaves clues.
Yeah.
And, we have a shout out channel on our chat, and people at any time can put something in there, and then everyone jumps in and claps and cheers and so that behaviour is more likely to be repeated, and everyone likes a little pat on the back. So it's a really simple way to make sure that you're getting the behaviours that you want being done time and time again in the business.
Okay. I've got a point here about the topic I want to talk to you about. We might have covered it. I mean, it's an interesting topic. We can talk for 10 years about it, but we've covered a decent chunk. Problems, I've got here, keyword problems and solutions potentially as well. So what are some of the things that you find, for example, when we say a country like Australia could do better with productivity? What do you, from your experience, the top two issues, for example?
I think the top two issues are two things. One is R&D is incredibly expensive and complex in this country. So personal experience, built a piece of software. I've done 2 R&D grants. Oh my God, Emma. It is complex. It is time consuming. And I've done it twice, and I probably will never do it again because the return on investment for me around that was not there. And so that is a disincentive for many businesses my size to try and innovate and, be a forerunner of technology. It's hard. It's really hard.
So let me just, it's a bit of a quick, we're moving from the person's productivity now. You're saying what tools can we give the employees? So providing the mindset is right and the management is right, the motivation level is right, engagement right. You're saying still they need tools. That can go to another level of productivity if they have the right tools. And you're saying therefore you want to encourage those companies to invest in tools, invent tools and buy tools or whatever. And in Australia, it's a lot of red tape to lodge a claim for R&D.
Yes, if you're developing a tool. So that is as a business, if you're developing a tool. As an employee,
I'm talking about a business.
As an employee, the same thing. If you don't have the tools to make things simpler, then you're not going to be as efficient or as effective, if you're having to do a lot of manual pulling together of data or stuff like that. So I think as a business owner, that's one of the things I've seen, in terms of overall productivity as a business. If you're, and we talked about at the beginning, what the US is better at is actually investing in tech and doing tech.
So it's easier, you believe, in the US?
It's easier in the US and they do it more frequently. But here I think it's quite challenging as small businesses to invest in that IT, to invest in R&D from a development perspective. So I built a tool called Employee Metrics, which is a diagnostic tool which assesses a business for its current levels of HR compliance, risk and best practice, does a traffic light report, recommendations, and then a 12-month program of work. That makes my team's job much easier because we've had a massive look under the hood because we have something called accessorial liability where we're exposed as our clients are in terms of fines for not being compliant. So that is one thing. So giving that tool to my employees makes them more efficient, gives the client more bang for their buck, but it's challenging as a business owner to invest in that.
So it seems like we're covering here from the productivity point of view. You're saying the laws in the country, employment laws and whatever, could help the businesses to feel that they can control their own destiny better and be able to let go of people who could be perceived as a drag on the business. I say with all respect. And then you're saying, so providing we have the right people now, they need the right tool. Yes. And how does the government create an incentive for businesses to purchase or invest to create the right tools to augment the productivity of those employees,
Yes.
Very interesting, makes perfect sense.
And software is part of that, and we're in a software age now and we've got AI and that's a whole other conversation. But how do we do that more effectively? And I think one of the challenges that I see is that it comes back to that productivity. And if we want to talk about AI now, I think AI is very fascinating in the sense that I already am talking to businesses that are already forecasting that they're going to let go half their workforce within 6 months. Now, their workforce doesn't know that, and some of those workers are overseas workers already. Doesn't matter where they are, they're going to be out of a job.
Roughly those businesses, we're talking about 20 people
20 or 30 people.
Or
now,
hundreds.
And we've seen other levels. Obviously, Atlassian went out with 1,600 last week or the week before. So I can see major impacts. There's a couple of things here. Number one, from a forecast perspective, businesses in that mid-size, which I think is where you play a lot, aren't great at forecasting their headcount needs now. They tend to be very reactive when they recruit. Someone leaves and they just fill that role because somebody left. They don't seem to think very strategically about what is the workforce that we need now, what's the workforce we need in 6 and 12 months. I think it's a blind spot.
Like
I know.
Comparative advantage.
I know.
If the other competitor does it, they could win.
I
Why
know.
wouldn't they do it?
I think it's a missing skill set. You know, I think it's one of those things that people find difficult. It's a little bit like, how do I guess what I'm going to need? I don't really know what the future holds, so they don't do it.
CEO needs to put a growth strategy and it needs to satisfy the shareholders, and that growth strategy needs to be resourced properly. And
absolutely,
how can that not flow?
But you're talking about bigger businesses there. If we talk about bigger businesses that have got that CEO.
What's a bigger? What size?
Well, for me, 97% of businesses in Australia are small businesses, mum and dad businesses.
Yeah, no, but you used Martian Logic clients. We don't have anybody under 100 employees.
Yeah, but those businesses under 100 are often where most small businesses are in Australia.
Yeah.
They can't forecast. They don't have that sophistication in their skill set. And then you layer over that AI, what can AI do in a business? Now, I think the smarter people are trying to get their head around it and wrap their head around it. So are we going to have part of the workforce is AI, agents, and part of our workforce is humans? How are we going to work and achieve our business strategy with our mixed workforce? You know, what do AI do compared to what do our humans do? We talk about humans in the loop. So if you think about recruitment is being massively impacted by AI at the moment. One of the things we're seeing is that we've had a massive increase in the number of resumes we're receiving. But 64% of the CVs that are coming in aren't a match to the job. Where AI is great is screening. You need a degree, you need 5 years experience, and you need this background. That's where AI is really sophisticated and can quickly screen that. The issue that we've got, though, is you and I, again, having been around for a while, you get that occasional CV. There's just something in there that, you know, really piques your interest. And you might interview them and they would have been screened out by AI. So I talk about screening done by AI, assessment done by a human, so that we're making sure we're, again, working together. But what I'm not seeing in the market is that forecasting around what does our business look like and need from a resourcing perspective now, and in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months' time from a resourcing perspective with AI in the
Can I suggest something in that loop, in the recruitment loop?
Yeah.
The screening on paper or via knowledge online and resumes and stuff, that shortlisting, clearly going to show you on paper there's a good match. But then what happens is the so-called phone screening, where you want to hear people speaking.
Yes.
You want to see them speak. You want to see the body language, etc., for those soft skills, yeah? So that is the piece that takes a big chunk of recruitment. So whether you're starting with 10 resumes or 100, you're going to get to a point where these are really, they seem to be amazing, and you need to start to speak with them. So what we have is the video interviewing. This is a recorded questions that's available for you straight away. Within 30 seconds, 10 seconds, you're going to see all that body language, the presence that they have, the smile or lack of, or whatever. And even that can be assessed from the psychological point of view, psychometric testing, so to speak. So that's the piece that now we are bringing into the game.
Correct.
Not just the matching of, just the resume, so to speak, to a job description, if we were to dilute it to that, which is, I know it can be more than that, but what comes after that? Because chasing someone to just hear them speaking on the phone could be 2 hours worth of work. So many calls back and forth and missed calls and SMSs and go back before you can speak with them. And that 2 hours can be turned into 10 seconds. It's right there, that thing that you just click on that play button and you can hear them and you go, yeah, great people, etc. No, not for this job, not for that manager, not for those clients, And then you keep going, you go, oh my gosh, perfect. I need these guys for an interview. Jason, the manager, would love them. The clients would love them. And you start to go from there. So that's the piece that we feel is missing. We've been investing heavily for 7-8 years now with video interviewing. And now in this world of matching, we're going back to, that two-dimensional resume, what we call. The third dimension is that video, seeing them speaking. And that's the big picture we're building in the platform.
And I think that's incredibly important. I still think there's potentially, you and I are of a generation where we have a comfortable on video. We're doing it here now. There are plenty of people in our age group and older that may not be so comfortable, and that may be a disadvantage to them.
The only reason you want to speak with someone is because it's important how they look and feel and talk. So if they're not going to record a video, they're not your people.
Yep.
And also it's how you position it and how the question is and why. And so I think, that question has been discussed for probably 15 years right now, and no question about it. Video interviewing can be used for those roles.
Yep, as long as you're not discriminating.
Not discriminating.
Yeah.
Someone who's going to be talking to clients and he says, I don't want to record myself speaking for 10 seconds for the application, and you think that's discrimination? Come on.
No, I'm not suggesting that, but plenty of people have unconscious bias and conscious bias. And so it's like the old days where we used to put a photo on a CV and people would make judgments on how someone would look.
Well, I think it's actually better than looking at a name.
Yep, potentially.
And
I can see the value. We send out
name
videos.
And a location without seeing the smile and the spirit of that person.
Yeah.
I've written 5 blogs about this exact topic. I think video interviewing is the opposite. It gives that person a chance to fight against the perceived name and location, and maybe the name implies certain skill, color, and all of the above. You see their smile, you see how they talk and walk and their spirit and what's behind that person, and you can connect with them, and that can shortcut all that.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. That phone screen and the video, and we use them as well. I'm not saying they're not worth doing. I just think with a word of caution too.
Yeah.
Because not everyone is a skilled interviewer. That's another issue that we've got. People haven't been taught how to interview effectively. I talk about technical, behavioural, cultural interviews. How do you make sure you're doing a great assessment? You talked about psychometrics. I love one called Harrison's. Is Natasha a fit to this job? Yes, she's a fit, and these are the mandatory traits and these are the desirable ones. That can massively, it's another data point. It's not the only data point, but it does add to the assessment that you're making of that individual and how successful they might be in your role.
Definitely you choose it carefully about the role and how you position it and why and stuff. You don't just blindly put it everywhere. Some roles you don't need it if you're comfortable with people to have that kind of certain personality traits, or it doesn't matter, then you don't probably want to hear them speak. You just might as well just bring them in straight away. So very good. All right. So this is really interesting. So we covered 2 major things. We talked about employment law and the law of the land, how it can encourage or discourage companies from being a bit more free to compete and demand certain productivity level from employees, if I could say that with cautiously saying it in a sense. And then we talked about also that same kind of environment, the government environment, if you like, to encourage in investing into tools that will augment further the productivity of those people. And AI is a big topic, and I'm really glad you took it in that direction. So you believe the government can do a little bit better, especially with AI now, to encourage businesses to explore and invest into AI?
I think the challenge is the law is taking a while to catch up. So one of the concerns that I've got, if we think about that performance management, and again, AI is moving faster than ever before. It's better today than it was yesterday. It's never going to be as good tomorrow. It's going to be better tomorrow than it is today. Here's one of the things I foresee happening. From a performance management, I think businesses have lost control of what people are using AI for in their business and what they're not. We can pick it out sometimes on CVs where they've still left the parentheses in the CV. So it's very obvious it's just been bought off AI or pulled off AI. Yeah. The issue then is what happens when somebody gets terminated because of work that they have produced using AI. And my concern is
That's crazy.
And that's a risk though, because the law says you cannot. Your termination, unfair termination, is that termination unfair, unjust, or unreasonable? That's the legal test. Now, if somebody who's quite junior in an organisation is using AI, doesn't realise it's hallucinating, doesn't realise that it's incorrect, and produces something that goes to a client, and they get fired. Are they going to have a defence that says, you never taught me about what I could and couldn't do with AI, and you never told me that there was a policy on how to use AI in the business? Because in many businesses, there isn't a policy yet. Like I think about how we started in it, was trying to get all of our team using it and getting shared case studies and what's working and what's not working. And we put some guardrails around it. This is how we want to use it. But a lot of businesses don't have that first level sort of engagement or trying to wrap their hands around it. What about from a strategy perspective, this is how we are going to permit the use, and this is what we need as the guardrails or the checks to make sure stuff isn't going out potentially that isn't right for the business. So I do have a concern that we're going to start seeing some people being terminated because they're producing AI or overly reliant on AI, and their defence will be...
So that's a combination of the law.
Yes.
But also companies to start to create policies to make it clear so employees don't feel scared of using AI.
Yeah, because we want them to use it, but we need to manage it in a way. And everyone has different levels of tech knowledge and ability. And I think the other thing that's worth commenting on this point too, and many of your listeners that are aware of this, is we do have very complex employment relations legislation.
Apparently the most complex in the world.
It is amazing. Like even just recently, around respect at work, we have 1 in 5 Australians are sexually harassed in the workplace in the last 5 years. We now have an obligation as employers to go out to the marketplace, to go out to our workers and find out what they think their risk of sexual harassment is. And then you need to take that on board. We just had our first case land this morning where an employer, a director of a business in a cafe, had sexually harassed and assaulted an employee. He had hugged her, kissed her, and then told her to take some money out of his wallet. He's been fined $90,000 in fines and compliance risk. Now, he deliberately asked somebody else to leave the office, so he had an opportunity. You have an obligation as a business owner to teach your people what sexual harassment is and isn't, and you have to mitigate any risk. So if I use my own business as an example, we go out to client sites. So when they're working at home, they may be perfectly safe. When they go to client sites, they're at risk because I have to make sure that my clients are not going to sexually harass them. So there's and that comes back to that red tape piece. There's a lot of red tape for businesses to get their head around when it comes to managing a workforce, let alone managing them to optimise their performance.
Sorry, on that sexual harassment piece, I'd really love to understand that point. So what are you recommending or saying here that's missing? Just on that point,
yes. So
you're saying a lack of training?
Lack of training. So what is it? What isn't it? So every business should be running appropriate workplace behaviour training every year, a couple of times a year. It should form part of the orientation.
So our clients use our compliance platform, especially schools and aged care. And part of the compliance we do, it caters for checks, training, learning compliance and policies. And the learning piece plugs into we're a reseller of Go One, and there's numerous courses on that topic, and they all have that topic, sexual harassment and bullying, whatever, part of their compliance training, mandatory, and needs to repeat every year. And it's that is what we're talking about.
That is what we're talking about, but also lead by behaviour. So, I always get a little nervous when it comes up to Christmas time because we need to remind people what happens at the Christmas party needs to be managed as well. So even when you go to a place outside the work, that is an extension of your workplace, and all those workplace
100%.
rules still apply.
Yeah.
I think training is fundamentally what is still missing in many organisations, and we need to get better at that. We need to make sure that our managers lead by example, do sensible things like if you are having a work Christmas party, make sure everyone's done the training, send out an email communication beforehand saying, just a reminder, these are the sorts of behaviours behaviours that are and aren't appropriate.
Yep.
Have a couple of people that are not going to be drinking that can make sure that anyone who has taken too much gets in a cab.
How did we get into that topic? Because we were talking about the AI training and stuff, which is thank you. That's great. It was a great point to cover. I'm not regretting it. I'm just saying, trying to go back to where we were. We were talking about AI and a combination of the law.
Yes.
There's some more clarity and stuff for the law, flexibility, clarity, all of the above. And also companies to start to really take policies of the use of AI more seriously. That then and only then people feel comfortable of using AI because they know what they can do and not do. And that will then lead into that productivity.
But I think that's part of it. The other part, Anwar, is workforce planning. What does our workforce look like now? What is it going to look like when we have a whole lot of agents combined with employees? What does that mean from a redundancy perspective? And what does that mean? We're going to need to reduce our headcount. Where does the headcount get reduced? So that workforce planning is big. The workforce is going to be hybrid. There are going to be AI agents coupled with people.
Well, do you think the law's going to have to deal with that at some point?
Yes, I do.
What does it mean, and what does it the dismissal, in other words, if that's the right word for it, would that is going to be more flexible in terms of there's redundancies because AI can do this.
Yeah.
Do you think we're going to have to deal with that as
I
a
think
society
that's
at some
coming
point?
in already. Like the unions are agitating for, consultation on AI because at the way it works at the moment is if you think you've got a need to reduce your workforce, you need to consult with your employees and say, this change is coming. This is what we think the impacts are going to be. There may be some redundancies as part of that situation. So I would suggest that many businesses now need to be looking at what are the implications of AI specifically for their business, and then, I read an article the other day that said people are saying AI is making them personally 10% more effective from a productivity point of view. And I know I'm seeing that in the way I'm using AI, but the businesses aren't getting more than 10% from a business perspective. And a lot of that is because there's not a structured strategy around how we're planning the workforce of the future, what that means for our people.
This is such an important point. Let me just break it down. If this is all we can cover for the rest of the podcast, it would be more than worth it. So this AI change is happening. We know it's going to replace some roles. Yep. It's either partially, most of the role would be replaced or all of it.
Yep.
And a lot of roles will be affected. So it's quite significant, once in a lifetime kind of change, yeah? We don't need to educate people about that. People know that. It's a backdrop of the conversation. In saying that, I'm saying the law has to deal with that. If the law in Australia, for example, as a country, as a society, doesn't create enough flexibility for businesses to feel free to take advantage of that, we became non-competitive. That whole productivity thing is going to go down the drain against other society, other countries.
Yes.
Now, that in itself, not a pleasant conversation. What will happen to those people that lose their jobs, etc. We can talk about that all day, and that's all great and important conversation as a society. So what's your thoughts on that? A company is going to say, look, a change is going to be coming. My competitors in the US already made that change. They can sell the product half the price. I need to make it yesterday. I can't consult with people for 12 months if I need to cut some jobs. Certainly that's not the case with us. I'm just saying if it is the case, whatever industry or company this might be, what do you think? How are we going to deal with that as a society?
I think the first thing is businesses need to get smarter about how they're going to use it and where is the return. The second thing is if we think about the financial viability of that business, because business owners, to your point, have the right to make their business as viable as possible. And if their competitors are doing it, they're probably going to have to follow suit in order to survive. Yeah. And that will be the rationale that they will use for downsizing the human component of their workforce and potentially upsizing the AI component. The law already enables them to make people redundant, so they will follow those laws in place.
You think it's adequate when it comes to replacing them with an AI piece?
I think it's
and
evolving.
The rate at which?
I think it's evolving. And we don't know what we don't know. This is a lot of this is guesswork because, if I had a magic wand, I'd very happily look into the future and see what we could see. But I just think we're already starting to see the redundancies coming through.
Because, you used the 3 words before. What was it again? Reasonable.
Harsh, unjust or unreasonable.
Harsh,
unjust, or unreasonable.
No, that's the bad stuff. You can't dismiss people for any of those reasons. Yeah. Okay. So,
or the way you do it. I think that's what's clear here. The outcome may be reasonable, as in we need to reduce our workforce to be financially viable.
Someone's doing really well.
Yep.
But the AI piece could be to the tune of 5% of their cost.
Yep.
And our competitors have done it, and they're selling the product for less.
Yes.
That is harsh and unreasonable and unjust, all of the above, but yet more commercially.
Yeah, commercially viable. But when we talk about harsh, unjust, and unreasonable, it's how you do the exit.
I mean, that's the least of people's problems.
Well, actually, no, most people fail the unfair dismissal test. They do it poorly. They might send them a text message and say you're no longer required.
This is easy. They can watch a video on YouTube and learn how to do that. That's the list.
I have to disagree. I think most managers,
in your opinion, that's what's stopping people from dismissing people, or actually finding a real case and working with the law about whether you can dismiss someone if their performance is okay. Come on, that's the real issue.
The real issue is that most managers aren't good at having that conversation. They would do anything not to have that conversation. They don't do it well. I worked in.
I'm really sorry. I don't know how to understand this. You're saying the reason why people not dismissing people because they don't know how to have the conversation with them?
They avoid it. They definitely avoid it. Now,
they think they have a case and they do it because they are
and they
scared
do it
of doing
poorly and then they fail. So
they can get an HR person to do it if that's the case.
But many people don't have HR people.
Talking about the people with HR. Let's talk about my clients, 100 to 2,000.
And even then, they sometimes stuff it up. But, and then if they do stuff it up, here's the thing.
I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I cannot connect with you. I believe the real reason is they're trying to find a case that they won't be sued for unfair dismissal, not about how it's conducted. Because I generally believe you can learn that from a YouTube video of 5 minutes, how to conduct a meeting that is,
I've seen it done incredibly poorly over the years. Incredibly poorly.
That's what's stopping companies to have someone drag in their performance for years on the company because they can't find someone to have a fair meeting to dismiss them.
Definitely in small businesses where there's no HR. Okay. Definitely in small business. In your larger businesses, they've got HR, which mostly have it covered. But I come back to that harsh, unjust, and unreasonable. It costs somebody, I think it's $87.90 to put in an unfair dismissal claim. And guess what? If they have not followed the process step by step by the law, they could get up to 6 months' salary and or reinstatement. But that process
isn't about the meeting.
It is that you have to bring them in.
The meeting can be done in the best way possible, but the substance behind it is the real issue about is that fair or not. What is the substance? Oh, look, your performance. Okay, let's define that.
Yep.
It's not about the meeting and how you conduct it yourself.
A business has the right to run a business in a way that's going to be financially viable for themselves.
Okay.
Yep. So you
I
and I agree on that.
that's small businesses probably. I'm not really sure. There must be a cutoff before this changes a little bit in terms of obligations on businesses.
So the only difference between big and small,
under
just
20
to be clear,
or under 50 or whatever.
If you're under 15 and under, you have 12 months before someone can take you for unfair dismissal. 15 and over 15, you've got 6 months before someone can take you for unfair dismissal. I'm sure there's also
a few things that the smaller guys are.
They get an unfair dismissal code, which means they can have that conversation in a little bit more relaxed way. But once you're over, it's mainly an extension on the time before somebody can raise a complaint against you. How long they've been in that role.
Yeah, I'm talking about if you feel there's a problem, you've got to give people a chance to fix that, and that can take a long time. Months. It requires an intelligent and fair framework to execute that within. Those kind of meetings and the substance behind them, that's what I mean. I thought you're referring to, and forgive me if I clearly misunderstood you, it's that final meeting when we're saying, look, we're really sorry we have to let you go. That's what I was referring to when I said, look, you can learn that in 5 minutes on YouTube. So really what I'm saying, yes, I agree with you, maybe this is conducted so poorly with too high of a percentage of the time in this country, but it really is what is really in my opinion, our employment law makes it maybe too complicated. A lot of companies are scared.
I would agree with you.
How do they create a business case, a case that can be defended in court in the case of an issue? How can we make it defendable? right, in terms of why we want to let this person go, meaning we were fair about letting them know and giving them a chance to improve or blah, blah, blah. So that is where they really, it's a lot of work and they don't have the skills and it falls in a too hard basket and they end up really, it ends up being too much of a drag.
Yes. And there are other ways you can do it. There are always options. There are riskier, more expensive options. For example, in that situation, one way that an organisation may choose to exit a one-off person is if it's not working, they might have a conversation and say, let's have a conversation without prejudice, which means under a cone of silence. And then you and I are not beholden to what we agree, but I might sit in that conversation and say, look, it's not working out. How about I pay you some go away money? You'll go away quietly, sign a deed of release, and we've done this in one conversation.
That could be troublesome.
It can be if
leading someone or giving them, that's
you
right.
Can't just, that's why you need help and support to have that conversation. Well, it's called a mutual separation. So it is an option on the table, or you can go down the redundancy route.
To suggest to someone that they should be leaving because of financial benefits or something, that in itself could be an issue.
Yes.
No?
Well, no. So I'm saying there are always options on how you can exit someone from your organisation, and a without prejudice conversation where someone's
I'm just
not
saying,
performing.
proves my point. It's about the substance, not about how you conduct yourself in a meeting. There's really proper employment law, serious things about the fairness, meaning there's a real substance behind it. It proves that you've told this person there was clarity about what it means for them to be successful. You've made it very clear. They've been given a chance, still didn't deliver. That process is where people dread and they find complicated and they need a framework and they need the knowledge.
Absolutely. And I think, you and I are in agreement. We're going into uncharted territory where businesses may be making decisions about the size of their workforce based on AI and the leverage they're getting off that. And I think that's very interesting territory, which we're venturing into now. We're noticing more and more people are coming through asking for help with the redundancies, and some of that may be AI related. So, I think that's a bigger issue about what's this combined workforce going to look like.
Do you know if the government is looking at some legislations to tweak and the current employment laws from a dismissal point of view for the purpose of AI, replacement
of AI? I think AI is coming into that legislation, and as I said, the unions are agitating for that because, obviously they can foresee that many employees may be impacted by a reduction in headcount. Think about programmers. There's a lot of programmers that have lost their job. Where are the jobs going and where are they coming from? Electricians, probably safe. Plumbers, probably safe for a bit longer. Lawyers is a concern, So the workforce sands are shifting. And I think, I'm not clever enough to foresee what it's going to look like, but I've got some ideas of what it's going to look like.
Universal income? What do you think about this idea?
I think that, if some people are saying that might be what happens, that we get more free time and productivity is still done. I'm not claiming to be an expert in that area whatsoever, but I think it's fascinating. And I think, businesses like mine, I'll give you an example. I have a very small team in marketing. There's 3 of us in marketing. What we've been able to do with AI for a small team, for small businesses, is massive leverage. Our productivity has increased through AI. That's not using AI agents, but it's using AI to produce more. Now, you could argue that productivity, if we go back to that productivity question, Anwar, are we producing more slop or are we producing more quality? The volume can increase because you can throw a few things in there and whoosh, the volume comes up. A classic example, this interview, I popped you into AI and said, tell me what I need to know about Anwar. And it gave me a lovely little summary, much quicker than had I gone and searched up your website and it was all collated in the one piece. So, businesses are getting those efficiencies out of it. But now, a lot of people that I liaise with now are starting to build agents that are actually taking people's jobs.
Don't you want to, can I call you small business? Would you call yourself?
Yep.
So in your business, don't you want to do more? Clearly there's a lot of room for you to grow and I know you're growing and you're killing it and congratulations. But, you've got more productivity, you're able to do more, you're able to sell more, etc. Really it's interesting. I'm not really sure, especially with us, we're hiring more than ever.
Yep.
And we're at the forefront of AI, whether it's features in the platform or whether it's the ability to create code quicker and stuff, all of the above we're doing, yeah? And yet we're growing and we need more people. If marketing is going to allow me to get more leads quicker, I want more leads, more leads. That means I'll still hire more if I've got the cash. So I can get, instead of 100, I want to get 5,000 leads if I could, right? And therefore then hire more people to close those deals if that was the case. In the example of leads as an area of, productivity augmentation. For us, I want more and I would hire more salespeople. Then I'm going to need more implementation people. Would then have money to have more developers build more products. We always say we would invest $1 billion in R&D yesterday if we have the money.
Yeah.
That's how much ideas and things we want to do.
Yeah.
And so, for us, I'm really not seeing it how AI is going to be shrinking businesses, but maybe there's more nuance to it. Maybe replaces certain. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think there are nuances. I think it depends on the industry and I think it depends on the role, which comes back to that workforce planning. What can be done better with AI that may leverage someone to go and do more high value activities?
Yep.
And then again, it comes back to a training issue. Are we training our people to step up to that next level? Because they don't have to do the transactional work that held them back, was time consuming. Now, some people or some employees will be able to make that leap, some may not.
That's where the issue comes in.
And then you come back to that performance issue.
So interesting. That's very clever of you to say that. I heard this guy saying, I can't remember his name, in a podcast said, you're not going to be replaced by AI, you're going to be replaced by people who can do AI.
Yes.
If you can't do it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah, which is interesting. But I still think fundamentally, Anwar, people want to deal with people. We are humans. We want that contact. And maybe this is an efficiency gain that done smarter is going to be that thing that increases our business. I want to grow my business. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
But there are aspects of it, and I actually see in mine incredibly positively. It enables me to produce more with less. That will enable me to grow certain parts of my business that is client-facing.
We are I think we're the dumbest creatures in the universe. I genuinely feel how we never pause for a second with all these changes, such as the AI change right now. We never pause for a second and say, what is this all about? The big picture. So we have, what is the average now? 60, 70 years, the average lifespan in the Western world, whatever that is, yeah? We have those many years to enjoy, especially from the time that you're maybe, let's say 15, when you start to see the world and you can maybe travel and enjoy the world, you've got some freedom, 16, 17, let's say 18, until if you have the wisdom and the teaching to say you've got between the age of 18 and maybe 65, that's sort of on average your life. What is important for you? What is it that you want to do before you die, before you're not on this earth anymore? What really matters? It's all about growth and productivity and competition. And people die like Steve Jobs before they even started to enjoy his life. He died at the age of 60, invented some of the most amazing things in the world. I don't know how many years of his life he was really, truly a happy person with his family, with his daughter and the new kids they had with the second wife and whatever. What really matters here? And for example, this notion of right now, look, the Earth is going to be destroyed, so we need to start to send some people to Mars. So we start a colony there because at some point Earth is not going to be there anymore, too polluted. I mean, what are you talking about here? And we let this population growth going completely out of control, puts more pressure on competition, and no one pauses for a second and asks, what is this all about? What really matters for a human between the age of 18 and 60?
Is there a question there? What I do is I practice gratitude. So for me, I have a gratitude journal. It's 5 minutes a day. And I'm also very clear what my objectives are, both for my business and towards my next stage. So gratitude journal is what is 3 things that I am looking forward to. What are 3 things I'm grateful for? There's a bit of a mantra there. And then at the end of the day, I reflect on what are 3 great things that happened today. Now, just taking that 5 minutes for me helps me reflect, helps me take stock, and helps me be very grateful for what I have in my life. I think the other thing is I I'm very clear about what my business plan is. I have a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year business plan. And then ultimately I'm going to sell my business, and then I want to mentor the next generation of female entrepreneurs. And for me, that's giving back. I want them to learn from the mistakes I made, and hopefully I've got some stuff that I can share.
Your business will go to a female entrepreneur as part of this whole thing.
Be lovely. And then I want to do board roles. And so I've got my first board roles. I want to sit on boards, advisory and, potentially an ASX listed board.
I thought you said Broadway or something.
No. That's not my skill.
Could be on a board of a Broadway company.
Yeah. So, I think as humans, to your point, I think we need to spend a little bit more time planning, a little bit more time reflecting, and giving back is a big part of life for me. Not only do I do what I do.
We are so delusioned about what real happiness is at the moment. It is not funny. We are meters and meters away from really what real happiness is because of the speed of change and the level of competition and the craziness of the cost of living. I would love to find the statistics over, let's say, 100 years or, as far as we can get that stats about how many days people in a city like Sydney, so in the last, say, 60, 70 years, if we can find some data, how many days an average person could afford not to work before they go broke. I would love to see that number and how it changed, shortened or lengthened or whatever. This is such a big thing. This is what quality of life is. This is what mental health is going to come from. That pressure, this is not a normal human thing. I don't think we're meant to survive or live in an environment like that. How can you possibly say to someone, focus on what's important, when they think they've got only maybe 15 days from the time they lose their job until they go broke? They can't afford their rent anymore and whatever. There is something fundamentally wrong about this society.
And then you're working from your primeval brain, and then that impacts your performance and so on. Look, I think it's really interesting. I spoke to a guy in the US, Smiley, and I can't remember his surname, and he talked about, and that's the other thing that we've got, is potentially 5 generations in the workplace, from our baby boomers right through to Gen Zs. And he said Gen Zs are really depressed. And it's like my son at 16, 17 says, I'll never be able to afford to live in Sydney, Mum. That they've already worked that out at 16, 17. I don't think I was having those thoughts at 16, 17.
Quality of life. That's
they've already.
That's so unfair. I was born in here and I can't live here. And also, I work in here and I can't live here. Yeah. It kills me. I learned that about 15 years ago. I swear to God, every time I think about it, it depresses me. How when they said the frontline workers in cities like New York and London and Sydney, whatever, cannot live where they work. It hit me so hard how unfair that is.
Yeah, we need to do a better job of distributing our workforce and our people in different suburbs so that they can. We had that same instance. My kids went to the local public school, high school. We couldn't get high school maths teachers because they couldn't afford to live in the area, and that's really sad.
Or an hour and a half drive otherwise, or on train. That's not a lifestyle. 3 hours in
They turn up
commuting.
And they're tired and exhausted already.
God, it's an average thing to spend 3 hours in London for frontline workers to be on commuting 3 hours a day. It's not actually a big deal.
And that's why we have burnout and we have attrition in the nursing profession. I'm not even sure what that is, but I'm sure it's high.
So gratitude. I really respect you for saying that. I know a little bit about the topic. My appreciation of this topic came from when I had an eye-opener about this when I was reading about mindfulness. And then this gratitude as the first pillar, the number one thing, foundational pillar to mindfulness is gratitude. I go, well, what does that mean? What's going on? I thought, mindfulness was yoga and this is now gratitude. What are you talking about here, And as you learn more and more, my goodness, how powerful it is. And guess what, I grew up, I come from Christian background, Christian Orthodox background, although I'm not really a practicing Christian as such, but I respect the culture very much. And I knew people who were Muslims as well. So I was the Christian Orthodox are the sort of center.
Yep.
They're not, on the right of Christianity, nor on the right of Muslims. They're sort of in the middle. You can make friends with both where I grew up. I'm someone who had friends on both sides. And you see the older people and the actual religious leaders on both sides say that thing that basically when you say to them, you ask them, how are you? How's your leg? How's the house? How's the car? Because there was a problem in that area. You're saying, how's that going? Yeah. And the first thing they all say to you from both religions, and maybe 5 different, even smaller sort of, different, with Muslims cultures, you've got 4 or 5 different Muslims, and same with Christianity, you've got the Catholics and Protestants and all that. So across the board, yeah, the older guys and the religious leaders, they would say this thing about before they answer anything, before they start to tell anything, they go, more than what we deserve. Thanks God. It's all good. Thanks God. More than what we deserve. And you've got to ask them again and maybe again before they start to tell you or complain about anything.
Yeah.
And I always didn't understand what that is growing up, and especially came to Australia after that, and I was removed from all that. And when I learned about this gratitude thing through mindfulness, I started to connect the dots. All those religions have gratitude as the number one thing. And mindfulness is supposed to be the older than all of them, like thousands and thousands of years ago. I'm going, this is how humans evolved. They've recognized there's something about gratitude that makes you more whole and makes it more of a stable spot to be in before you can go to the next spot, more sustainable, as opposed to climbing too quickly on a house of cards. It really is the most fascinating thing.
I enjoy it. I've been doing it for about 5-6 years now, and I keep all my books, and occasionally I'll flick open to something 2 or 3 years ago and just see what I was thinking about on that day, and it's really lovely to use it in that way too, as a reflection
Absolutely.
technique.
I really respect you for doing that. 5 minutes a day.
Yep.
A journal.
It's quick. You talked about mindfulness. I also meditate, but I'm not very good at that. I'm a type A personality.
It's hard, isn't it? I know.
But, people will say, I tried meditation once and it didn't work. Well, it's all about the practice. And so I keep practicing.
Yeah. It's hard. I try, but I'm definitely not there yet.
Yeah.
Hey, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much for sharing your, experience as a human being, as a professional as well, a HR practitioner of years and speaker, motivational speaker, etc. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you soon, I'm very sure.
Thank you for having me.